Hi, everyone. My name is Mohsin Memon, and I am a game designer and a learning professional. I also teach game design at a French design school, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. I'll be talking about a case for practice spaces and a model that we have created as a result of witnessing 20,000 game systems and game experiences where corporate professionals have played games and drawn meaningful insight from these experiences. We've also taken a neuroscientific view at practice spaces and how the human brain has evolved to eventually enable learning, and what we can do as learning professionals to design these practice spaces that can facilitate powerful insight, learning, and ultimately change. So before I go into talking about the AFERR model or the method through which you can create practice spaces where learning can take place, I want to go back in time a little bit and tell you a little bit about the history of where this is coming from. So I am 37 years old, and I have 33 years of experience, of professional work experience. And you might be thinking about those numbers aren't quite adding up. And that's primarily because I started professionally working at the age of 3.5 because I acted in a movie and then many movies beyond that, starting from the age of 3. And that, along with a number of later experiences, put me in the position to be able to discover some of the insights that I'm going to be sharing with you here today. And sometime this time last year, I was writing about practice spaces. And today I'm delighted to say that we're not only looking at practice spaces as an environment where learning can take place, but also creating a model or a framework through which other learning professionals can use practice spaces using the AFERR model. So without any further delay, let's dive into what the AFERR model is, how it works, and what kind of capabilities it's leveraging that is inherently present in the way that we learn, in the way that the human brain learns. So the AFERR model is basically what you're seeing on your screen. Starts with activation, moves into forecasting, then into experimentation, realization, and then subsequently reflection. So over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to take you through these 5 stages and help you understand a little bit of the neuroscience and a little bit of the mindset behind the AFERR model, how it works. If you are interested in learning more about practice spaces, I'm going to drop a link in the chat that will help you to learn more about practice spaces. And then I'll also share some documentation around the AFERR model towards the end of this presentation. If you do have questions along the way, please feel free to ask those questions. And we will have time towards the end of this presentation where I will be answering all of these questions one after the other. So by the end of this presentation, you'll understand how the AFERR model works and what you can do as learning professionals to create it. In a nutshell, what we're saying is that for any kind of meaningful learning to happen, the human brain naturally goes through a certain process. And this process starts with activation. And if there's learning associated with it, if there's learning to be drawn from that experience, it ends with reflection. So activation is where the human brain starts to think about taking an action. I think the biggest challenge that we are facing today is not one of an attention span when it comes to learners. It's one of consideration span, which means the question that our learners and our consumers are now asking is not that do I have the time to watch this video, or do I have the time to do to learn something? The question is it worth my time? That's the bigger question that learners are asking today. And activation aims to solve that question by getting into the consideration of the learner. So what you're doing with activation is you're activating the curiosity and intrigue of the learner. And I'll go a little bit more into the detail of the neuroscience behind this and how it works. Once you've thought about once you've actually considered that this is worth your time, you then the human brain then starts to forecast and starts to think about what is it going to do in order to achieve its goal around the topic that it's been activated on. So the human brain starts to do what is called as forecasting, and it starts to make a plan, and it starts to create an approach or a method towards achieving that goal. And the next step beyond forecasting is then experimentation, which is then the human brain starts to wants to experiment with it and actually do the thing itself that it has thought about and it has ideated about. And then once it has gone through that experimentation process and that cycle, it arrives at the realization stage or phase, where it is evaluating the difference between forecasting and experimentation, meaning the results. So you're comparing, the brain is comparing what it has anticipated as the outcome and the actual outcome from the experimentation. And that's where the realization happens. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these areas and go a little bit more into the detail of why some of these things or these stages or phases are really important in the learning journey. But that realization is very, very crucial for the learner to come in touch with the difference between the plan and the actual. And that opens up the door for reflection to fundamentally take place. So we're going to go a little bit into each one of these topics one by one, and we're going to talk about a little bit of the experimentation that we've done and the number of games that we've ran over the last 8 years in order to enable learning and arrive at a model like this. So with the activation phase, the essence that we are trying to get in touch with is capturing the learner's imagination. I believe this is one of the most underutilized tools in the toolkit of a learning designer. Many a times we don't sufficiently engage learners because we fail to tap into their curiosity, tap into their intrigue by leveraging existing methodologies like storytelling is a great means and a medium to pique the learner's interest. And we've experimented with VR headsets and tools and objects and things that can help to really activate the learner's curiosity. One of the things we found, as a matter of fact, with VR headsets when we were experimenting with them was that in a physical or a virtual environment, game environment, we found that VR headsets were often taking away from the immersiveness of the learning experience than adding to it. So after an investment of over $50,000 in just VR headsets, we had decided that we wouldn't use VR headsets because there were better, more efficient and effective ways of activation. And I think that's great news for learning professionals because that means you can use traditional media to engage and tell a story and facilitate a powerful learning experience. It's also important to acknowledge that activation is also the stage where you are getting your learners to really buy into the narrative that you are communicating. And when I say the narrative, I mean if you're creating a gameful environment in which you want players to interact and take action, then you want them to understand why it is that they're doing what it is that they're doing. And you also have to show them the what and the how part of what it is that they're going to be doing in order to facilitate, in order to play and learn. What we're really looking at through the activation phase is autonomy, player agency, and we're trying to create that with a number of game environments or storytelling ecosystems that can really get players to and learners to absorb and step into an alternate reality, an alternate world through which they can practice the skills that they do normally at workplace, but in a fantastic or a sci-fi fantasy environment. So activation becomes a very, very critical starting point for creating practice spaces. Once you've sufficiently activated players, the next stage beyond that becomes forecasting. And this is something that the human brain is naturally doing. And I think that's the most incredible insight that we've stumbled upon through the games that we've ran with Evive, which is that the natural tendency for all learners at the end of activation is now wanting to use this information, this activation thing that they've gotten activated about, is now they're trying to take that energy and apply it into making a plan and making a forecast towards what they're going to be doing. And this is something that the human brain does very, very naturally. You think about anything, there's always the agenda of the human brain. It wants something out of it, and it starts to forecast a plan towards getting that. And this is we look at studies that have been done before by various learning professionals, and there are models in the industry that facilitate and talk about experiential learning, like the Kolb's learning cycle and so on, where they talk about ideas and concepts like conceptualization, and talk about the importance of how valuable it is for learners to conceptualize their learning and help to integrate some of that, some of the new information that they're getting with information that they've known from before. And that facilitates them to make a plan, or make a plan of action, if you will. And that inherently leads us right into the experimentation phase. So this is where they engage with the simulation or engage with the experience itself that they've been activated about. And here's where they try to play out the strategy that they thought that was going to be a winning strategy. What they planned as a part of their forecasting is now they are going about implementing it. And now they're going about practicing some of these skills. And this is also where the term practice spaces comes from, because we provide them the opportunity for them to talk to one another and strategize and play out their strategies as well. Now, once they've played out their strategies, it's highly important for them to come in touch with the difference between their strategy and their forecast and the actual results that they got as a result of the engagement or the gameplay or experiment. And we've noticed from the 20,000 games that we ran for numerous learners across various countries and organizations, we realized that when players did not have the sufficient information to understand the difference between the forecasted plan and the actual results, they did not have the appetite to learn because they hadn't fully come in touch with what they need to change in what they were doing. And that's why realization as a stage or phase that learners must go through is very, very important. And one of the ways that we do that is by allowing players to come in touch with the consequence of their choices. Within the experimentation phase, players are making choices, they're making decisions, they are interacting with one another, they're doing a number of things. And one of the things that brings them in touch with the with making them ready to reflect and learn something meaningful from the experience is the realization of the consequence of their choices that they're making during the experimentation phase. And lastly, once they've had this realization, they are now able to reflect, they're now able to talk about what they learned or what was the insight that was present in this experience. And I think the powerful thing about a model like this is that it helps learners to, each learner to draw learning that is relevant to them and not any longer a cohort-based learning experience. Although the experience and the journey itself might have been a shared experience, but we continue to see that reflection fundamentally brings this right into their integrated understanding of the learning. So that in a nutshell is the AFERR model. I'm mindful of the time that I have here, so I've had to really condense this to a far extent, but I'm also sharing with you here a link that will direct you to the details of the AFERR model and help you understand the neuroscience and the research work that we've done and we're continuing to do in the AFERR model. So we've got 4 minutes, I believe, in this call. So if you've got questions, I'd love to answer those questions. And I'm hoping to spark up a meaningful interaction here through which we can all facilitate learning and draw insights from a model like this. And do you find it to be useful? Do you find it to be functional as a model for your learning systems? Our anticipation is that in the long run, we're going to be doing a lot of research to support this model. It's going to become an open source model that learning professionals can contribute to and then build learning systems around, because these are the building blocks of what the brain naturally does in order to draw learning. And my call to learning professionals today is to say that instead of pushing content or instead of looking at learning with an agenda of what needs to be learned, I think it's time we start looking at how does the brain actually want to learn? How has the brain evolved to learn? And then how can we support the natural progression and the natural process of the brain to enable learning and meaningful insights from experiences? And once we do this, once we get a skill of doing this kind of a process using the AFERR model, we can start to bring realization and reflection in everyday life, and that can support insight and learning for us. Great. So it seems like there aren't any questions right now. So thank you very much for being here. I've dropped my LinkedIn URL as well. Please connect with me and follow my work. It'd be a real delight to exchange notes with you and learn about what you think about the AFERR model as well. Thank you.